We're back on. We're talking about Ninja Assassin.
Yeah.
And what that led to.
That was the whole story, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're working with them again currently.
Yeah. My initial plan coming into the end of 2012 was to slow down. I've been writing like a man running for a bus since I was 17 years old. Then I thought about it some more and thought, well, hang on a second. There are a lot of guys who have a bigger footprint than me in television or comics or film, but nobody with the same footprint in all three. Why don't I create my own studio, a mini studio, to produce TV series, movies, comics? And I brought in Pat Tallman to work with me, who recommended the idea of calling Studio JMS, because that's how the fans know me. I'm just known as my acronym, JMS. And we set out to start, producing our own shows, owning our own movies, our own comics. And I thought it was going to be a very slow process to get this thing moving, and I was quite wrong. Right out the gate, we've got Empathy and Reliance, which is financing a film we're going to shoot in Germany next year. My first directorial debut in features. We also have a series called Sense8, which we sold to Netflix. 10 episodes. They'll be going on the air fall of 2014.
Can you talk a little bit about that? What that's about?
Sense8, Lana Wachowski called me to San Francisco, where they live, with her wife, Karen, to see if we can come up with an idea that works for television. They're very socially conscious and socially aware people, and if they were going to come into television, they wanted to do something different. We said, what if we did the first show where the story is told on a planetary scale in ways that no one's ever tried before? What we came up with was 8 characters in different parts of the world, in Nairobi, China, Mexico, Germany, UK, US, who become aware of each other telepathically. They suddenly come to this new state of consciousness where suddenly I in Nairobi see you in San Francisco. We can have a conversation with each other to see how would they react. How would they get over their own insecurities, their own doubts? How would they react having someone in their own head, seeing their secrets? How would they react when there's someone out there who fears that they are a threat to humanity and wants to destroy them, as prior clusters have been destroyed? And to actually shoot the show in those locations, not fake it, but shoot 6 units simultaneously in 6 different countries. And we came up with that story and structured it out. We wrote the first 3 scripts on spec because we wanted to see up ourselves if it would work or not. And we went out to Netflix last fall. In the first of what were going to be a series of meetings, we had offers coming in from various other cable networks and broadcast networks. And we met with Netflix at 10 a.m., pitched them a story. They read the scripts already. Our next meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock. They called it 1, take off the market. We want to buy it. 10 episodes, no creative interference, do whatever you want. Big budget, a lot of money, go. And we said, okay. And so we're in the process now of prepping that. We've got a line producer engaged, and we're doing budgets, and we're starting the process of location scouting. And I'll probably be doing a lot of traveling in the next few months to Nairobi and to China and to Mexico and to Germany to set up our various locations and production deals with local companies. It's going to be a show unlike anything I've ever seen before. It's story-wise, it's very smart. It's socially aware. They wanted this to be as new visually for television as Matrix was for film. And we came up with some new devices and new approaches to action and storytelling that haven't been seen before in television, new toys. And we're all very excited about doing it.
That's great. What about working with Netflix in that model?
The Netflix model is really cool. It's very new. We're following the House of Cards model, where we'll shoot 10 episodes. They'll be all available the same day for download and for watching. And people tend to binge watch these days. They watch a whole season of a show at one sitting. And our show, and again, Netflix has said, we don't want to get involved. You guys know what you're doing. Just give us a sense of where you're going and then just go. And we did that. Give them a season 1 overview. They went crazy for it. They see this as, a challenging, difficult show, but if we can pull off what we think we can pull off, it could change a lot of things in how television is perceived. So, yeah, we're in the process now of pushing ahead on pre-production.
That's really cool. Any other projects in the works?
In television, there are some things that we're talking about now. We'll see where they go. On the film side, again, the film I'll be shooting in Berlin next fall is based on a true story, was Changeling. During the latter part of World War II, 1942, Leni Riefenstahl, the German propagandist, was shooting a film in Berlin called Tiefland, set in Spain, 1800s. And needed a lot of extras and bit players and day players who look Spanish, dark hair, dark eyes, swarthy of appearance. And there weren't many left in Germany, that particular part of our story, for all the obvious reasons. So she ordered in with a gypsy concentration camp, pulled out 100 men, women, and kids to be in her movie. So during the day, they were on set, being cleaned up, pampered, fed, craft services. At night, back in the camp again. So for a lot of them, the movie became the reality, and the camp became the dream or the nightmare. And it's told from their point of view. We're shooting it, tentatively at least, at Babelsberg, which back in the war was UFA Studios, which is where they shot the original movie. We were shooting on the same stages that she shot her film. So it's pretty cool, and NBC is very happy to be having my first directorial debut, which is extraordinary. I mean, to be 58, knowing that I have my first film I'll be directing next year, how often does that happen? And if you look back at the chronology of the work to date, I had this whole 15-year-long career as a journalist. Anybody would be happy. They ended up in Time Incorporated. That would be enough. Then I had this whole television career happen, which I wrote 300 produced episodes, and ran my own show. That should be enough. I've written 300 published comic books, and bestsellers. That should be enough. And now I'm, doing Changeling and this thing. That should be enough. Running my own studio. I keep reinventing myself every few years, and despite, reality, I keep succeeding at it, which even I can't understand some days. But I think it comes down to one simple thing, which is follow your passion, follow the things you care about, tell the stories you want to tell. I think that as kids, we tend to spontaneously sing, dance, tell stories. And someone tells you, well, you shouldn't do that. You're not very good at that. Adults should do that. You're going to embarrass yourself. And we begin to unlearn our passions. And we fall asleep on our own lives. Something happens to wake us up. It's a diagnosis of cancer, someone dies, whatever it is, you get married, get divorced, and there's suddenly you wake up. But if we can stay awake and make informed decisions and reinvent ourselves on occasion and follow our passions, amazing things happen. Coming from where I come, from poor environments, street, blue collar, no friends or relatives in the business, I should be working at a gas station or in prison right now. But despite all that, I am here because I followed the things that matter to me. I told the stories that matter to me. Even for shows that were as lame as Jake and the Fat Man, you do the stories you care about. And you follow your passions, things work out sometimes.
Were there people that helped you along the way that you can really pinpoint?
Those who helped me were mainly those secondhand. I mean, there was Norman Corwin, of course, who was a big help. Some teachers at high school that helped out. But for the most part, no. I got here on my own. There's a thing that I refer to as the tyranny of reasonable voices. Those who are around you, who are your friends or your relatives, who don't want to see you embarrass yourself or fail, because failing is terrible. It's much to be avoided. And they'll try and don't do it, don't take a chance, don't put yourself out there, don't be vulnerable. And they're saying it for all the right reasons, and they're completely 100% wrong. Because they themselves didn't take that chance. They themselves didn't risk, failure. And thus don't want you to take that chance. But if you succeed, then it calls their decision not to pursue their passions into question. I'm a big believer in failure, that you have to embrace your inner failure. The military says that in any exercise you're doing or the program you're doing, you must fail from time to time. Because if you don't, you're not doing it right. You try it, you fail, and you learn where it didn't work when you bounce off, and you do it again until you can succeed. And we are, as a culture, are very risk aversive. I've always been willing to just be a goofball and fail and fall on my face and get back up again. And I think that is one reason why I've gotten to where I am. Nothing scares me. I was, given what I went through as a kid, and when I was in college, I got beaten almost to death by a gang. Uh, I'm not afraid of much of anything. So consequently, I'm happy to take whatever risks I have to take. And it tends to work out more times than not.
I should ask you about that, that you were beaten up that way. What was that for?
I was in Chula Vista. I was 20, and I was walking to a bus stop that I don't drive. And 6 guys, gang members, jumped me out of nowhere. And they wailed on me for about a little over 10 minutes. And think about how much damage 4 or 5 guys can do in 10 minutes. It's pretty bad. And they finally took off, and ambulance showed up, and they, were asking me what faith I was, which always is a bad sign. I had a lot of loss of blood and internal injuries. It was bad. In fact, the local paper did an article about how, anyway. And as they're reeling me in, they're looking like I might not make it. And I made my peace with the universe. I never hurt anybody, always tried to live an honorable life. And then just as I'm thinking this, wait, hang on a second. I've got stories I want to tell. There's things I want to do. There's characters I haven't explored yet. And I fought my way back based on the fact that I want to tell these stories. And as a result of that, though, as bad as that was, if I go into a story meeting with a network, how does that compare with this? I've already looked at the worst thing that could possibly happen. There's nothing you can do to me at all. And once you realize that they can't hurt you, that they can't kill you, they can't eat you, they can't put you in TV jail, there's nothing to be lost by being brave. So I've lived my life and fought my career that way. And I'm a pain in the ass. I recognize that. I acknowledge that. But oddly enough, it works. I'm one of the few creatures whose natural environment is hot water.
Have you ever had writer's block?
No. No, I never get writer's block. And it comes down to, again, knowing your character. Here's the secret. If you want to be a writer, here's the secret. Imagine your best friend for a second walking across the living room at night, the lights are off, and they bang the shit on the coffee table. Now you know your friend. You know exactly what your friend's going to say when that happens. You don't have to think about it or worry about it. You just know, because you know your friend. Writing is no different. You get to know the character so well that whatever you drop them into, you sit back and watch what they do. And you write it down. It shouldn't be homework. It shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be, oh my gosh, what happens next? You just know. And you let them do it and you write it down. Case in point, in Babylon 5, we had the Centauri Emperor who I planned all along for Londo to assassinate at one point. And I was writing the script for that episode, planning a year ahead. Londo's going to kill him. And I got to that moment, and Veer in my head stepped up and said, hang on, you're wrong. Let me do it. So I'm a nice guy. I'm a shy, quiet guy. And I'm a good guy. And if I kill this guy, I will have grief. I will have pain. I will have angst. You can dine off that as a writer for episodes down the road yet to come. I should do this. And I thought, you're right. Whatever part of my brain is playing you at this moment, you're right. You go do it. And I swore down what he did. And when writing can be effortless, writing can be fun, and it's not homework, that's the best. When you're sitting there and it's just happening and you're writing it down. There's a thing where, imagine a dance hall, formal dancing, and over here is a guy who just came out of the Arthur Murray Dance School. And he's doing a really good job, but in his head you can hear him going, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And over there is Fred Astaire. And he's just dancing. There's trying to dance, and there's dancing. There's trying to write, and there's writing. You can get out of your own way and just be that moment where you're just doing it. There is no high that compares to that. No truth more easily apprehended, more emotion more easily rendered than to just watch it happen and write it down. And that, for me, is the drug. That's the addiction. So I can have those moments of perfect clarity that I know can translate for an audience. That's what keeps me going.
That's beautiful. I do want to ask you about your comic books,
Yeah.
The work you've done there, and how that differs from the other work, the other writing that you've done.
As I mentioned, I'm kind of a mutt. I go where the story is. Growing up as a kid, I loved comics. I collected comics. I was good at collecting comics, as a matter of fact. I, as a young kid, managed to collect a full run of Silver Age, from issue 1 on, Spider-Man, Thor, much Silver Age Superman, X-Men from number 1 onward. And I just loved comics. And when I was 12, my grades fell. My father assumed that somehow the comics were to blame for, because back then comics were blamed for everything from juvenile delinquency to alcoholism. Brought me in and tore up every single one of those comics right in front of me. So the all was left on the floor was torn comics in the box that they were originally in, which had Joe's Comics written on the outside. So, again, doing the things that get stuck in your filter as a writer, you eventually wanted to do comics down the road. And went to Top Cow Comics, same time we're doing Babylon 5, and wanted to do my own line of comics, which I would call Joe's Comics, because that was the box that I was left with. And now I was going to fill it with my own books. And they said, sure, because I had the rep from Babylon 5. Did Midnight Nation and Rising Stars, which were and still are highly regarded books. From there, went to work for Marvel, did Spider-Man for 7 years, did Thor, Fantastic Four, left there to go to DC, work on their Superman Earth 1 graphic novels before Watchmen, and said, you know what, as part of the whole Studio JMS thing, we should bring in the comics component to this to make the three-legged stool. Relaunch Joe's Comics, which have appeared this past month in bookstores and comic stores across the country, and is selling ridiculously well. Most independent comics sell in the area of 15, 20,000 to do really good. I was hoping we get maybe 30, 40,000. We ended up selling 70,000, which puts us probably somewhere toward the top 10, top 15, which is unheard of for independent new title coming out of nowhere, no previous established character names, titles. And again, these aren't meant necessarily to be movies or TV shows. They're just meant to be comics. Because if I want to make a TV show or a movie, I make a TV show or a movie. These are meant to be comics. And we'll do 12 issues at a run and stop. If we want to do more, we'll do more. If we don't, we don't.
What's your process?
I'm always confused by that question. What is my process? I don't have a process. I wish I knew what that process was.
What about even from the collaborative standpoint of working with an artist to create a comic book?
In terms of working with an artist, I write full script. So at page 1, panel 1, she walks in the room, sits down on a chair. Panel 2, the guy comes in with a gun. So it's all broken down, panel by panel, which the artist then comes in and draws. My job, whether it's as a producer or director or writer or comics guy, is to pick the talent that illustrates what I have in mind. So I find the artist or the actor that is in line with what I have in mind. Once you've done that, half your job is done. So for the first book we brought in Ben Templesmith, who has this very scratchy, dark, mean artwork style, which works perfectly with the story. And I give him the script, and back comes Beauty. That's my process.
And I mean, you've also worked and done comic books on characters that you grew up with that you talked about. Superman, Spider-Man. What was that feeling like for you to be writing for these characters that are so ingrained in?
That's a lot of fun. When someone says to you, here are the keys to the kingdom, here are these characters that you grew up with as a fan, here's Spider-Man and Wonder Woman and Batman and Superman, Flash, go and play. That's terrific. That's a great opportunity, and it's a great compliment. And also a chance to give back to readers now some of what I got. So I try and write stories that are a little more challenging, that will raise ethical questions, and try and kind of give back that ethical point of view in the stories that I read as a kid, but now adjusted for a modern audience. So as an example of that, I did a bunch of books for the Brave and the Bold line for DC, which is combining two different groups, two different heroes. And I sent Flash back in time to World War II to meet up with the Blackhawks. He was injured. He couldn't run fast, but he could do everything else he could do. And at one point, his leg is wounded, and the Blackhawks in here are in this building being attacked by German soldiers. And the Flash gets all these bricks and throws them at them at high speed, knocks all the Germans out. And Blackhawk turns on him with a gun in his face. What the hell is wrong with you? This isn't a game. We're here to kill them. They shoot at us. We shoot at them. If you're not going to shoot them, I will shoot you. This is what a war is. And Flash is the thing that I don't kill. But Barry Allen, wearing the uniform, is an American. So how does he reconcile this? And he realizes what he has to do is he takes off the Flash uniform, puts on a GI uniform. Flash can't kill. Barry Allen, a soldier in the military, can do that. Barry Allen is authorized to do that. And we explore what is it proper to kill. So the chance to take those kind of characters and explore those kind of questions, for me as a fan, is just beyond description.
And one major one that you did was after 9/11, the Spider-Man comic.
Sorry. When 9/11 happened, Marvel Comics knew they had to deal with this somehow. They had to address this and discuss it. And they weren't sure how to do that. But they figured the one person who should do it was Peter Parker, Spider-Man, because he's a New Yorker. He speaks for New York. And they called me and said, we want you to address 9/11 somehow. And do whatever you want. I told them, I'm sure that the words to deal with this are in the dictionary somewhere. But which ones to use and what order to put them in, I have no frickin' idea. But I'll think about it. And I tried several times to write it. Nothing came out. And we were shooting Jeremiah at the time. And I was on location in the producer's trailer. And I thought, I'm going to try one more time. I wrote on, there are no words. And another line followed that. And one more after that. And the strange prose poem meditation came out that is unlike any of my prior work stylistically before or since. It's almost like channeling something. The closest it comes to is some of Norman's stuff. And it was a whole long meditation on why things like this happen, why we couldn't stop it from happening, how do we interpret it, what do we do about it, and what do we do about it within ourselves. And the whole thing was written in about 45 minutes, just like automatic writing. Sent it off to Marvel, and Axel Alonso, who was the editor, closed the door to his office, put his feet up, just within vision range of where the towers were, read it, was in tears, and they published it. It became a strong rallying point for a lot of people. I heard from firemen who were there who said we passed it around among ourselves, because what a lot of folks didn't understand was as we were working on the ashes, we needed shoes all the time. Our souls were melting. Boy, is that a metaphor for you? But so no one understood the tone of what that felt like, and that was in the book. I heard from reverends who used it in sermons and kids, people who use it in schools. New York Times did a 2-page article about it. And it was a chance to do good with the comics format. And I hear about it to this day. I was at a signing in Chicago just a couple of weeks ago, and people brought their 9/11 issue over to have me sign it and said this it affected them in profound ways. And that's the wonder we can reach across the medium, whatever it happens to be, and touch someone else's heart. That's pretty impressive. And of all things I've done in comics, that's probably one of my proudest achievements.
Talk a little bit about your fans. Who are they? What kind of things do they ask you?
My fans are a funny bunch because they come from different areas. I mean, the TV fans don't necessarily know that I write comics. The comics fans don't know that I wrote television. And the movie fans don't know about either one of those. So we're trying to get everyone get organized, for God's sakes. They tend to be, very smart, well-read, very loyal. They ask really good questions. And they tend to show up when I talk a lot because I tend to speak a great deal about following your passions and your dreams. And I remember I was talking at one panel, and woman said, "What if you don't know what your passions are?" A lot of us don't know. I said, of course you know. So well, I don't know. All right, let's try something for a second. Ask some questions. Chocolate or vanilla? Which do you prefer? Chocolate. Day or night person? Night person. Blue or black? Blue. What do you want to do with your life? And she froze. And I said, okay, what happened as you froze? She said, well, I was thinking about, can I make a living at it? What my parents think? What my friends think? I said, but you knew, didn't you? She said, yeah, I wanted to paint. Thank you. You know? And they are there to ask those kind of questions and have that kind of a conversation about following one's passions. And I've had guys who told me that based on things I've said, they've changed jobs, they've changed lives, they moved from one state to another to pursue their dreams. And very rarely does it not work out. You know, I know people who in Jersey who complain about the weather, the jobs, the neighborhoods. Move. Happiness is balance. If you're not happy where you're standing, shift your weight. You know? And that tends to resonate with people. You know? I had a friend who worked for the state of California for many years, 30 years to be exact, and in a cubicle working for a faceless master on a distant mountaintop. And we were on the phone a year or two ago, and she was very unhappy and upset because here she was, worked in this cubicle for 30 years, so nothing of her was in there anywhere. And it was too late. I said, no, it's not. It's never too late. On my bench, as you walk out the door, you will see engraved in the wood 3 important words: never surrender dreams. And you don't have to surrender even in your 50s. And I said, what do you enjoy? What gives you joy? Said, well, I like my pets. Okay, good start. What else you got? So I like taking pictures. I'm not a professional photographer, but I like taking pictures. Okay, why don't you combine those two and try and pet photography? I'll get you a camera, we'll get some classes, give it a shot. And she wasn't sure about it, but she now works for the state of California 3 days a week, and 2 days a week following her passions and what gives her joy. By this time next year, she'll be doing that full time. It is never too late to be what you want to be in the first place. And that's the gospel that I carry from convention to seminar to workshop. And what's cool about my fans is they actually have come to believe that. And to see that in operation is pretty extraordinary sometimes.
What do they ask you about your work?
Oh, we just have silly conversations. They know that I'm a goofball. So we tend not to get into too serious conversations about it. I mean, I do writing workshops on occasion. Well, I say, ask whatever questions you want about writing. I'm happy to answer them. But they usually want to know about, the anecdotes and the sidelights and the personal stories and who pranked whom, what happened to this show and that sort of thing. It's a postmortem in many cases.
Is there one question you get asked the most about the show?
Not per se, no. I get pretty wide range. And again, it's almost more like a church service way I do these things. Funnily enough, I was about to walk into my talks at San Diego Comic-Con, and this large woman comes racing toward me and shakes my hand and says, I wanted to thank you for what you say at these panels because I realized if you can do it, anybody can do it. And the moment she said, I got to feel her pulling the words back. Oh, I didn't mean that like that. No, I know what you meant, and you're absolutely right. Yeah. So, no, there isn't anything. In one question they tend to ask, they enjoy the conversation. We're like family.
That's nice. What do you think? What do you see as the future of television?
We're heading for a convergence between the online environment and television as we know it. One manifestation we're going to see down the road, I suspect, is a blurring of gaming and television. Here's how it's going to work. You watch a television show online, and in the background, at the same time, you're downloading the game elements of that. So let's say take Star Trek as an example. They go to a planet, and while they're exploring it, in the background you're downloading the background of the planet, the mission, environment, meshes for the various CG environments, and all this material comes into your computer. And then when the episode is over, you open up the game. You can now live in that environment for a week, following the same mission or variations on that. And so when fans like a show, they like to live in the show. They do costumes. And you can then live in that show for that week. Next episode, another download, another component, expands that universe further. You can explore that world as much as you want to. And to blur the line between what is television, what is gaming, what is television, what is online. And at some point, it's not going to be like the television screen over here, your computer screen over here. It's all going to be just a screen. You know, it's all going to be the same shared experience. And we're also going to see, I think, a growing international component to this thing, because we as a people have been factionalized and marginalized and tribalized to within an inch of our lives. You used to be at a college campus, you see kids hanging out in the quad together and having conversations. Now you see everyone plugged in, earphones, headphones, iPhone. But the urge for community remains. I have friends who will go online with their friends in other countries and states, and they'll all queue up a movie or a CD at the same time. And they'll talk about what they're seeing and experiencing. They'll narrate or comment on the film as they're watching it to have that virtual community experience. And we're going to need to see some measure of that being incorporated into our television entertainment as well as the social media aspects of this thing. I think we're coming to a convergence that we can kind of see the shape of it, but we kind of can't quite yet, because we're limited by the tyranny of the known. When they did the Buck Rogers series of serials way back in the black and white early film days, there's a great scene where the ship is going down, and Buck says, "We have to evacuate the ship. Get your anti-gravity belts." And they get these slim, slender belts that could be anti-gravity belts. Get your ray guns, and what could be, ray guns, but it makes sense. Get the portable radio, and they get this huge box and being carrying out of it, because they were limited by what they knew what a radio was. They couldn't conceive of a radio this big. So looking down the road to what's coming 20 years down at us, we're limited by what we know. And so there's something we can't say, but with the shape of it, the convergence between social media, storytelling, gaming, those are the pieces. What that configuration will be, we don't know yet.
Our last question is, what do you think is your legacy?
I think that any writer's legacy should be the stories that they tell, to point to a better world, to point to better communication. I ain't much to write home about. I'm dorky, I'm a nerd, I'm not a social creature, I don't get along well with people in general. I have no kids. What matters to me is what I leave behind in the stories, because that's what's immortal, that's what goes on. And if in doing so I leave behind some good tales and inspire other writers to pick up where I left off and go to the next generation of what their stories are going to be, if I can inspire one person to penetrate the tyranny of reasonable voices and aspire to great things and tell stories, then it's all worthwhile. I'm pretty simple that way. I want to tell stories, get people to open up, tell their stories, keep that process moving. Norman spun my life around. And if I can do that for somebody else in the same way, I'm good. That's all I need.
Well, thank you so much, Joe, for sharing your story.
Thank you. Happy to be here.